What you're about to hear will make your jaw drop. Atlanta Falcons players just walked off the practice field in the middle of a drill, and Kevin Stefanski has nobody to blame but himself. This isn't speculation. This isn't a rumor. This is a full-blown player revolt that unfolded in broad daylight at the Falcons practice facility, triggered by a coach who couldn't resist rewriting history about one of the most talented young quarterbacks in the NFL, Shedeur Sanders. Let's start with how we even got here. Kevin Stefanski was hired as the Atlanta Falcons head coach with Matt Ryan installed as president of football. On paper, the fit made sense. Atlanta had offensive weapons, a hungry fan base, and 8 straight losing seasons to reverse. Stefanski came with a reputation as an offensive-minded coach who could develop quarterbacks and build winning systems. But he also came with baggage. Heavy, undeniable, well-documented baggage tied directly to his treatment of Shedeur Sanders during his time in Cleveland. Every player in that locker room knew it. Every coach on that staff knew it. The entire league knew it. The front office acknowledged the controversy and made a specific ask of their players. Give him a clean slate. Judge him on what he does in Atlanta, not what he did in Cleveland. To their credit, most players were willing to try, but that goodwill had a very short shelf life. It's a Thursday afternoon at the Falcons practice facility in Flowery Branch. The team is about 3 weeks into training camp and things have been tense from day one. Kevin Stefanski arrived in Atlanta with baggage. Everyone knew about his history with Shedeur in Cleveland. The sabotage, the undermining, the way he systematically tried to destroy a young quarterback's confidence on national television. Falcons players knew all of this before Stefanski ever walked through the door. Stefanski called a team meeting to address accountability, preparation, and what it takes to be a professional quarterback in the NFL standard training camp speech material. Nothing unusual until he made a decision that would prove catastrophic. Without saying Shedeur Sanders' name directly, Stefanski reportedly said something to this effect. "I've coached quarterbacks who had all the talent in the world but didn't have the work ethic to match." They relied on their natural ability and their famous last names instead of putting in the film study and the extra reps. And when the pressure came, they folded. Every single person in that room knew exactly who he was talking about. The reference to famous last names made it crystal clear, and the implication that Shedeur didn't work hard, that he relied on natural talent, that he folded under pressure, was not just insulting, it was demonstrably false to anyone who actually watched Shedeur play in Cleveland. The room went dead silent. Players looked at each other, some shook their heads. A few veterans exchanged glances that said everything without words. Practice started normally enough. Warm-ups, position drills, nothing out of the ordinary, but the energy was completely off. Each coaches could sense it but didn't understand where it was coming from. Then came the team period, where the offense runs plays against the defense. Stefanski called a specific play, walked the offense through the concept, and used it as another teaching moment. And once again, he made a reference to quarterbacks I've coached who couldn't read defenses properly and made consistently poor decisions. That's when it happened. Kyle Pitts, the Falcons' star tight end, and one of the most talented players on the roster, stopped mid-route, just stopped running, and then he took off his helmet and started walking toward the sideline. Not jogging, not running, walking with purpose. Other players noticed immediately. A few offensive linemen stopped blocking. A receiver who was supposed to be running a deep route slowed down and turned around to see what was happening, and within seconds, the entire offensive unit had stopped running the play. The defensive players, confused about what was going on, also stopped, and suddenly you had 50-plus players standing on a practice field looking at each other while Kyle Pitts walked off toward the facility. Stefanski's initial reaction was confusion and then anger. He started yelling at players to get back in formation, demanding to know what was happening, threatening consequences if they didn't resume practice immediately, but nobody moved. Not a single player went back to their position. Then Grady Jarrett, the defensive tackle and one of the longest tenured Falcons, took off his helmet and addressed Stefanski directly in front of the entire team. What he said, according to multiple witnesses, was devastating. "Coach, we all know who you were talking about in that meeting, and everybody in this building knows you're lying about Shedeur Sanders. We watched what you did to that kid in Cleveland. We saw how hard he worked, how much film he studied, how he showed up every single day and gave everything he had despite you constantly undermining him. We saw him make the Pro Bowl as a rookie while you were trying to sabotage his career. So don't stand here and tell us he didn't work hard. Don't tell us he relied on his name, and damn sure don't tell us he folded under pressure when the pressure was coming from you. The silence after Jarrett finished speaking was deafening. Every player on that field was staring at Stefanski, waiting to see how he would respond. And for about 10 seconds, Stefanski just stood there, clearly caught off guard by the directness and the fact that this was happening in front of everyone. His response, he tried to deflect, tried to say that Jarrett was misinterpreting what he said, that he wasn't talking about any specific player, that everyone was being too sensitive, but nobody was buying it, not after what they'd heard in the meeting, not after watching Kyle Pitts walk off the field, not after years of seeing how the media covered Stefanski's treatment of Shedeur in Cleveland. And then one by one, other players started following Pitts toward the facility. Within 2 minutes, more than half the team had walked off the practice field in protest, leaving Stefanski standing there with the remaining players and his coaching staff looking absolutely stunned. And the players who walked off didn't go to the locker room to pack up and leave. They went to the team meeting room and waited. They wanted to send a message, but they weren't trying to abandon the team. They were trying to save it from a coach whose credibility was already shot before he coached a single game. Arthur Blank, the Falcons owner, was immediately notified about what happened. He rushed to the facility and spent hours meeting with players, coaches, and team leadership. According to sources close to the situation, Blank was furious, not at the players, but at Stefanski for creating this mess in the first place. The whole reason the Stefanski hire was controversial was because of the Cleveland baggage, and one of the conditions of hiring him was that he would leave the Shedeur situation in the past and focus solely on Atlanta. Instead, Stefanski brought it up himself unprompted and used it as a teaching point based on lies. The players' demands were straightforward. Stefanski needed to publicly acknowledge that his characterization of Shedeur was inaccurate, apologize for spreading false information, and commit to coaching based on truth rather than narratives that served his ego. Meanwhile, Kyle Pitts was reportedly already whispering about options, a franchise cornerstone suddenly unsure about his future in Atlanta. Now let's be clear about what Shedeur Sanders actually did in Cleveland. He came in as a rookie and immediately showed elite pocket presence, outstanding decision-making under pressure, and leadership qualities that cannot be taught. He did all of this while dealing with a coaching staff that was actively working against him. Stefanski kept him on the sidelines when he should have been starting, ran offensive schemes that didn't fit his skill set, put him in impossible situations designed to make him fail, refused to give him credit when he succeeded, and leaked stories to the media questioning his work ethic and leadership. Despite all of that, Shedeur still made the Pro Bowl as a rookie. He still put up massive numbers. He still led clutch drives. There is a fundamental difference between tough coaching and character assassination, and what Stefanski did in that team meeting crossed that line completely. Veteran players have the standing to do what Shedeur couldn't at that stage of his career. He was a rookie trying to establish himself. The Falcons players who walked off that field are established veterans with Pro Bowl appearances, long-term contracts, and organizational credibility. By taking that stand, they validated everything Shedeur went through and made it clear that what happened to him in Cleveland won't be normalized or accepted in their locker room. The reaction around the league confirmed the weight of the moment. Current and former players flooded social media with support, while the traditional old-school crowd criticized the players for disrespecting the chain of command. But that criticism falls apart the moment you acknowledge that the authority figure in question was spreading demonstrably false information. This was not disrespect. This was accountability. Stefanski's credibility is gone before a single regular season snap. The front office faces an impossible dilemma. Cutting him loose creates organizational chaos, but keeping him risks a locker room that has already shown it will not follow his lead. If Stefanski cannot publicly correct the record on Shedeur Sanders, cannot earn back even a baseline level of trust from his players, and cannot demonstrate that he has actually left Cleveland behind, Atlanta's locker room becomes a time bomb. The players have already won the moral argument. The question now is whether the Atlanta Falcons front office has the courage to act on it.